AEM 21-8409DP air intake system is guaranteed to add horsepower and torque on the 2012 to 2014 Toyota Tacoma. It features a custom aluminum air intake tube and a polished finish and a custom heat shield, designed to help isolate the intake air from engine heat. It comes with an oversized Dryflow AEM performance air filter that is washable and reusable. Visit AEMintakes.com for a complete list of models this air intake fits. With the 21-8409DP intake installed on a 2013 Toyota Tacoma with a 4.0-liter engine, AEM dyno testing showed an estimated power gain of 8.7 horsepower and 8.3 foot-pounds of torque at 5,400 RPM. Actual results will vary depending on the condition of the vehicle, mileage, weather, and other variables. This AEM intake system will add style, sound, and performance to your car. This intake comes with all components needed for an easy installation, along with detailed installation instructions. The tools needed are shown. Start by turning off the ignition and disconnecting the negative battery cable. Loosen the two nuts holding the engine cover in place and remove. Loosen the spring clamp to disconnect the breather hose from the plastic elbow and disconnect the MAF sensor harness from the sensor. Loosen and remove the two bolts securing the airbox and loosen the hose clamp on the throttle body. Loosen the spring clamp and disconnect the air pump hose. Disconnect the harness on the air pump bracket and remove the three bolts securing the air pump bracket and set the assembly aside. Remove the two bolts securing the stock intake inlet tube. Disconnect the fuel pressure regulator breather hose from the rear of the stock airbox. Disconnect the airbox from the throttle body and carefully remove the stock assembly from the engine bay. Remove the two nuts and one bolt shown and set aside for use with the AEM heat shield in a later step. Disconnect the two white plastic clips from the inner fender to allow slack in the air pump wire harness. Remove the MAF sensor from the stock airbox and set aside for use in a later step. Remove the air pump cover and disconnect the wiring harness from the bracket. Slide off the rubber grommets to separate the pump from the bracket. Install the MAF sensor removed earlier into the AEM upper tube using the provided hardware. Mount the bolt removed in an earlier step onto the intake tube tab with the provided aluminum bung. Install a coupler and hose clamps onto the throttle body, but do not fully tighten. Check the intake tube position by reinstalling the engine cover and adjust the tube until the bolt lines up with the engine cover. Then remove the engine cover and tighten the hose clamps fully. Replace the fuel pressure regulator hose with the longer hose provided and connect the other end to the AEM intake tube. Reconnect the crankcase vent hose to the nipple and fasten with a stock spring clamp. Loosely mount the provided brackets onto the air pump using the provided bolts and washers. The short-armed bracket should be mounted on the left side, near the hose with the bolt pointed upward. Remove the bolt on the power steering reservoir bracket. Reinstall this bolt to secure the air pump bracket on the right side. Line up the left bracket to the inner fender hole and insert the provided bolt through the bracket hole. From under the vehicle, install the nut and washer on the bolt installed earlier. Install the edge trim on the outer edge of the heat shield. Mount the air horn adapter onto the heat shield and secure with the bolts and lock washers provided. Carefully install the heat shield, lining up the tabs to the holes exposed in an earlier step. Fasten the lower tab near the air horn and the tab near the washer reservoir using the hardware removed earlier. Then reconnect the air pump harness. Secure the rear tabs using the stock nuts removed earlier. Provide adequate slack to the pump harness and use the provided zip tie to secure the harness to the inner fender. Assemble the lower intake tube using the components provided and use soapy water to slide the hump hose closer to the tube bend. Slide the transition coupler onto the upper tube and tighten the hose clamp. Position and slide the hump hose over the air horn collar. Ensure that the hump hose is seated against the heat shield and rotate the lower tube into position. Then tighten all 4 hose clamps. Reconnect the MAF sensor electrical connector. Reconnect the air pump hose. Install the AEM air filter onto the air horn and secure with the provided hose clamp. Reinstall the engine cover using the stock hardware and place the AEM decal on the outside of the heat shield. Lastly, reconnect the vehicle's negative battery cable. Double check to make sure everything is tight and properly positioned before starting the vehicle. It will be necessary for all AEM intake systems to be checked periodically for realignment, clearance, and tightening of all connections. Failure to follow the installation instructions or proper maintenance may void warranty. The 21-8409 DP intake is not legal for sale or use on any pollution-controlled motor vehicle in California or states adopting California emission procedures. AEM manufactures performance air intakes, Dryflow air filters, and other performance products that are engineered to outperform. Visit aemintakes.com to learn more or to search for products by vehicle, dimension, cross-reference, or even VIN number.